So I'm going to be talking about the new world of corporate responsibility, which is something I am incredibly passionate about, and it's something that I do every day in terms of helping companies tell their stories. And when I think of the new world of corporate responsibility, I am thinking about a new moral authority that is existing today, and thankfully so. And let's just first things first, so we're all on the same page. Corporate responsibility has had many nomenclatures over the years: corporate citizenship, sustainability, shared value. I really equate it as doing the right thing, but as a business, being responsible to your people, to your communities, and to the planet that we live on. To me, that is the true definition of corporate responsibility, but done so authentically. So it wasn't always this way. For many, many years, what we thought of as corporate responsibility was a way to keep government from regulating, and it was very much the purview of a white male sitting in his office, maybe between the ages of 45 and 60. And don't get me wrong, I like men, but that was very much the way corporate responsibility was emanated through the company. And it would typically be his desire to fund a particular symphony or a hospital and have his name attached to it. And then as we move forwards to today, it still was very, very siloed. But what we see today is an embedded strategy which is core to the business and delivered and built with purpose in mind. Why is that? There are many, many reasons, but I do want to say one more thing. We also see companies taking on social impact and taking on major causes that years before companies would never even begin to think of. And business, interestingly enough, was oftentimes the enemy of activists. And in many cases today, business is becoming the activist. Who can forget years ago when Nike was accused of child labor? Okay? But now, in many commercials, you see Nike stepping up for people without the ability to have voice, whether it be people of color, LGBTQ. So again, you're seeing this fascinating reversal. Why are they doing this? Why the change? And why is it so important? Well, one, it's good business. And business leaders and corporations do their social research, believe me. Two, there is the note that, or the realization that businesses are made up of people and human center is where it's at. And employees, customers, partners are all asking for it. In fact, many are demanding it. I often quote Tim Cook, CEO of Apple. He made a comment last fall at the Bloomberg Sustainable Business Conference, which really resonated with me. And he said, people should have values. Companies are a collection of people. So by extension, business should have values. So the question he asks CEOs, and I think it's something we all should be asking, is what do you stand for? And just this past year, Fortune magazine does its annual list of best companies to work for around the world. Well, this past year, Salesforce won. And something that stood out to me was the quote that they placed at the top of the Fortune article, and it was a quote from a Salesforce employee. Not about the high pay, not about the stock he gets to receive, not about the fact that he has flex hours. He said he was thrilled to work there because he knew that company stood for more than just the software they sold. And to me, that said a lot. So let me quickly go through a few examples of where we're seeing business step up to be the moral authority. And it's not to say one reason, and that is the lack of moral authority we're seeing certainly in the US government and many other countries around the world. But shortly after the new US president took office in January 2017, he immediately established an immigration ban. 100 companies filed immediately a brief in court to fight it. Starbucks announced that they were going to be hiring 10,000 refugees in 75 countries around the world. Mark Benioff, Mark Zuckerberg, Reed Hastings all took to Twitter to just shame what they thought was egregious. And here in Europe, when the European refugee crisis unfolded, and unfortunately it still continues today, you saw business stepping up. Unilever published an article or document stating the need to integrate refugees, but also the importance to hire them. 36 German companies came together under an umbrella called We Together to help showcase the need to integrate and hire refugees as well. And of course, climate. Climate has been one of the first areas that business kind of galvanized around in the US. Of course, slow to the table because the European companies have always been very out front in terms of talking and realizing the challenges of climate change and what we should be doing about it. But even a 175-year-old jewelry company, Tiffany, bought a full-page ad the day before Trump announced that he was pulling out of the Paris talks, basically pleading with him, don't do this. And then 900 business leaders in the United States signed a letter to the world after Trump pulled out saying, quote, we are still in. And who can forget last summer the horrific happenings in Charlottesville with regards to the white supremacist rallies? After Trump made that ridiculous comment, and forgive me for passing on my political views, they might as well be religious views, Trump made that ridiculous comment about there were faults on both sides. And you had the CEO of Merck stand up and say, this is not right. Then you had Walmart, then you had Intel, and then you had the breaking down of the president's Economic Manufacturing Council. And then the one area that I was waiting, not necessarily waiting, but hoping business was finally going to step in and start talking and essentially bullying the ridiculous gun issues in our country. And following the dreadful high school attack down in Parkland, Florida, once those high school students took to the airwaves, took to social media, were on every major network television, business finally stood up. And Dick's Sporting Goods, Citibank, Delta Airlines, Hertz, all stood up and started changing their businesses to literally fight gun violence, excuse me. So, yes, it can be risky, there is no doubt. And as mentioned earlier, many business leaders will scour polling to find out, are we safe in doing this? Are we going to lose business? But inevitably, they are realizing that it is the best thing they can be doing to enhance their business. And increasingly, consumers are asking for it. Consumers want them to take a stand. 78% of consumers want businesses to be stepping up and fighting for social good and social change. And companies now are also starting to give their own employees the opportunity to have a voice and share, which is also something very new. Now, I will say in closing that companies can and should do more. And as an American standing up here after watching what has played out for the last 2 weeks, I have to tell you, I'm horrified. I'm absolutely horrified. I serve on the board of USA for UNHCR, the UN High Commission for Refugees, and I have visited many, many refugee camps around the world. And I never in 1,000 years would have thought that that would be unfolding right on the southern border. But I have to say, I am at least feeling hopeful because a great many US CEOs have stood up and said, this is wrong, this needs to stop, and most importantly, they will keep the pressure on because we need to reunite these children with their families immediately.